Nearly 88% of enterprises, AI pilot programs never reach production, meaning that only 1 in 8 prototypes become operational capacity that delivers real business value. My name is Paul Nashawaty. I'm the practice lead and principal analyst for the AppDev practice, and I'm joined by Ron from Bizly. Ron, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you? Great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too. Great to have you on the show. Ron, why don't you give the audience a little bit about your background and tell them a little bit about Bizly?
All right, thanks. Yeah. So my background, I spent the first part of my career as a venture capital investor. So I started at a private equity fund in New York, and then I went on to launch my own fund where I invested in over a dozen companies, had some great exits, and then shortly after that, I built Bizly. And what happened to me at that time was actually my office went under construction, and I couldn't use my conference room. So I tried to find places. I was in New York at the time. I tried to find places to do my events and gatherings. So I called nearby hotels and restaurants and other places. And I found that it was really, really painful and difficult to book spaces. It was very manual, lots of emails, phone calls. So I decided to build a platform to make that really, really easy. And so that's what Bizly is. It's a marketplace, an online marketplace for booking events at world-class venues. And we have a whole platform for deeper human connection. We think during the AI era, it's important for humans to meet face to face and get to know each other in a deeper, more meaningful way. So that's what we're building here.
Yeah, I think it's super exciting. I really do. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially when you look at the AI world. Many enterprises are moving quickly to really experiment with AI. They're launching these pilots and proof of concepts across organizations. So there's a lot happening here, and I think that the Bizly kind of concept of tying back those resources to human interaction makes a lot of sense. But turning those experiments that what people are trying to do into real world operational value often exposes deeper challenges. You have legacy architectures, rigid kind of development models, and organizational and operational structures that were never really designed for speed of adaptable ways of doing AI that's really required, but from new models. So Ron, let's jump right in. I think when we look at a lot of the topics and the things that are happening, there's many organizations have lots of different projects running with AI. They're trying these pilots. I said that the year 2025 was a year of innovation and experimentation. The year 26 is going to be more about implementation. So why do you think that many organizations are successfully experimenting with AI but struggle to really translate those experiments into real measurable business outcomes?
Yeah. Look, I think the number one thing is that it's an attitude shift. And so what I mean by that is that people are approaching this as like a playground. So and even to now, when you talk to most enterprise like engineers or employees, and you start talking about AI, the typical answer is, yes, I've played with it. And so when they get a pilot from their internal teams or they get a new tool, they're playing with it. They're not really using it. They're not embedding it into their workflow. And the primary reason for that often is fear, right? And also job security. So, the biggest worry for someone working in a corporate job would be that I tried this AI thing, it screwed everything up, and now I'm going to lose my job. And that's a fair concern. And I would say that at the highest level, that is the key bottleneck for why a lot of these things are going to sit on the shelf and people are going to look at it and say, that's a cute little toy, but I'm not putting that into my job and risking my job over that. So I think that the safety and security has to come from above. The top management, the owners, the founders, the executives have to mandate it to say, we want this. We give you the permission to fail. If things go wrong, we got your back. That message has to come from above, and that's the only way things happen. And so we've seen that in our own company and with our clients.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense. I mean, when I deal in my practice, I deal a lot with the fact that organizations are trying to release code on a very fast pace. Like we see across the SDLC that our research shows that organizations are trying to release code and applications on an hourly basis. 24% of respondents in our 2025 research indicated that. But like traditional applications, architectures, are not necessarily built to accommodate these new AI rollouts, right? So we have slow release models that were really never designed for AI iteration cycles. it really requires a faster feedback loop for continuous learning. So I'll ask you, like, from what you're seeing in your organization, what are the biggest, legacy barriers that you see? Is it architecture release cycles or organizational design? And what prevents these companies from modernizing fast enough for those AI-driven deployments?
I think that success is going to be a function of one factor, which is your courage to burn down the old ship and build a new ship. Ultimately, that's really that's the defining factor, because we face this, and we're not a big company. We're small. We've stayed pretty lean from a number of employees standpoint, although our revenue is quite scaled. But we had a legacy product, and I mean, for most people wouldn't call it legacy. I mean, it was built on modern Rails, but we built it starting in 2017. And so when we looked at this AI revolution happening, for a long time, we debated, like, should we just have the AI injected into this model, and can we, make it work? And we couldn't. Honestly, we couldn't. We took the more difficult path of actually building a new product, building it AI first from the ground up. And honestly, the AI works so fast. Software is like very different than atoms, right? And so, the constraints that we used to see in software, the development cycles now with AI are so much faster, but they're only fast if you build them from scratch. They're not fast if you try to inject them into legacy systems. There you're gonna see some real pain. And I would say that you might make a bigger mess than what you expected.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I often deal with past, present, future in my practice. Bridging the gap between heritage environments to new environments is a challenge. But we also hear the term future built often, right? We hear that, but what does that actually mean in terms of building, shipping, and operating software on a daily basis? When you think about the inside modern product and platform teams, future built organizations, really are looking at how they can deliver and release code based on their business KPIs. But what does that mean from your perspective when it comes to, the term future built, right? You made the comment of the heritage environments kind of are not ready for this. And I agree with you. What does future built organization actually look like in practice?
Future built means that the software is designed to be built by AI agents, not by humans. So that means you have extensive context libraries for every single aspect of the code base, but you also have the business rules and the business logic as context within that repository as well. So you're both combining the business philosophies and context, the design philosophies, the product philosophies, and of course the code philosophies. And so you're building the whole thing agentically. So, I don't know if you've heard about all these companies now where, like one engineer is now, able to do the work of 20 because the agents are doing a lot of the work. And now what this requires, though, is a very different skill set of actually being able to write, to be a great writer, to tell good stories so the AI understands them, is no longer as much about math as it is about being able to eloquently write and explain in a detailed fashion, with thinking through all the permutations and all the edge cases and making sure all that is documented. The AI, that's how you create future proof. You make it agentically friendly.
Yeah, I like that. I like that comment. I do think that you're right. The storytelling, developers, or I should say, developers have kind of changed the terms, right? It's like there's professional developers and the lines of business and citizen developers, but really the citizen developers are more like prompt engineers, right? They're writing their own narrative on what they're looking for and how they're trying to achieve those goals. But many companies are assuming that buying the latest AI tooling will really help solve the problem. But when the real challenge does lie when how teams collaborate and make decisions, and you were kind of alluding to that. But like when we think about that, where do you see technology leaders most commonly misjudging the balance between investing in tools versus changing the culture, process, and incentives? I mean, you were talking about that. It's okay to fail, right? It's okay to try and fail versus, okay, if you fail, then it's like not working. So where do you see the blend there, and how does that work?
I think of this current time as sort of the age of thoughtfulness. So if you're not thoughtful and you want to protect your job, but you don't really care about your job, you're going to throw it over the fence to this new toy you're buying, right? You're going to say, I'm going to buy this toy, tell my boss I bought something, I'm doing something in AI. We'll see if it works. No big deal. I got to play tennis this weekend, whatever, right? But if you're truly thoughtful and you're really locked in and you have the ownership mentality, then buying a tool is not going to save you from anything. It's really redesigning the system, the team, the workflows, the goals, the KPIs, how we operate, what we document, how we do this has to be reinvented. That is the only real way to make this work.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the adoption of the tools, I still believe we need a human in the loop because there's still that confidence has to be there. You have to know and like what you're doing, but you have to trust what it's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
When AI,
sorry. No, I was just going to say the trust is earned. It's not given, right? So you're not going to get a tool, but I trust this tool to do everything. You're going to have to see the outputs, fine tune, and I think many of the tools will end up being, averaging out to being a mean the same. And the success of tools you buy are going to be determined by your way of operating those tools. So yes, humans in the loop are critical.
Yeah, and AI is introducing new dynamic models to evolve continuously, which really does change the traditional concepts of static software releases, right? So when we look at that, that is a pivot from what organizations have been doing. So how do you think that organizations or enterprises should rethink their development and release models if AI is going to be become really a true part of the production software lifecycle?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that even 2-week sprints are dead. I think the whole and 2-week sprints were kind of the default model for a lot of fast moving startups. That's dead. I think the iteration cycles, the deployment cycles are way, way shorter. So, I really don't think there's a one size fits all approach that everyone should adopt. What I have done is, again, we kind of have to look at ourselves as the architects of the system. The humans are the architects of the system. We have agents, which are effectively free labor. We have tools that are free labor, effectively free. We're still paying for them, of course. But so what do we have to do now that the roles are shifting is how do you design the pod, right? So what I've been doing at my company is thinking about a pod to get business outcomes achieved. And that pod consists of people that work in synergy. You have the product manager understanding business requirements and getting feedback. You have the designer, kind of coming up with eloquent ways to bring that to life. And then you have engineers working with agents. And then you build this kind of loop that should be moving way, way faster than it ever did. So basically a customer can give you feedback, it gets right to design, it gets right to development. You don't need a 2-week cycle to do that. Now, where this works really well in my environment, because it's a startup, in a larger organization, you might want to build a striation of pods and basically do a micro a microsystem architecture with pods. And I think pods are the best, right? Small pods working together will create the greatest outcomes.
Yeah, and that aligns to my research. I mean, what we find in our 2025 research, we find that over an 800 end count respondents global study, 24% of organizations are looking to release code on an hourly basis, yet only 8% of those organizations are able to do so. So your pod concept does resonate very well with me. And I think that makes a lot of sense, large or small organizations. If you have those small interworking groups, you can actually deliver faster. So I think that makes a lot of sense. But I also think at some point, though, we have to kind of look at AI, as I mentioned, to 2026, the year of implementation. We have to look at AI as stop being lab experiments and becomes embedded in the products, workflows, and customer experiences. So when we look at that and we think about the indicators that organizations have to cross the threshold in order to make that happen, how do you see and what do you kind of view organizations trying to move from experimentation to scale? What signals indicate that AI is becoming operational rather than just experimental?
The signals are, again, I like to use one underscore term, which is thoughtfulness. So for example, if you have an engineering team, let's say you have people offshore and onshore, the previous workflow was that, some people on the product organization would create tickets. Those tickets would be sent to these engineers. The engineers would develop them, and then you ship them. today the signal is going to be, if you have a true redesign of the system and the team, what you'll hear back sooner and much more thoughtfully than you had before was that this engineer is no longer just writing code and shipping it. They're coming back to you with questions. They're coming back to you with alternative designs. They're coming back to you with different alternatives and decision points that you've never seen before from these people. That is when you know that AI is being used, because now they're getting questions, right, from their AI agent saying, which way do you want to go here? Are you sure you have thought about this? So again, but even that output is reliant on how well they've written their context and their prompts to even get to that smart, evolved thinking. But this is what leaders need to do today, is to really, those are the signals they have to look for and make sure that they keep at it until they see that. Every person on the team has to be coming up with more thoughtful ideas. That's the key indicator.
Yeah, Ron, I agree. I think that makes a lot of sense. I understand what you're talking about, but I live and breathe this data every day. You live and breathe it every day. It's kind of one of those things. But what would you advise the audience here? We talked a lot about how to kind of modernize, how to move forward, how to kind of take advantage of these things. What would you advise the audience to do to learn more and how to get to what we're talking about today?
So here's my advice. It's just based on my experience. My experience was that I moved from New York to the Bay Area, actually in 2021 before ChatGPT launched. And my thesis for moving here was that AI was the future and I wanted to be closer to where it was all happening. So I moved out here. And so for a few years, I've been banging the drum on hey, team, let's use more AI. Let's use more AI. And to be honest with you, I wasn't getting the output I was hoping for. And so it was only until recently where I basically said, everyone has to embed it. And these are the expectations I have. So every deliverable that you send to me or anyone on your team, whether it's a deck, an email, code, a new feature, a design, you've vetted that out using the free labor of AI. And everyone can tell the difference, whether you've actually vetted out an idea and given something polished, or whether you are not doing it. It's very, very clear. So that was a process improvement implementation I did, and I immediately saw results. And then once they start feeling it and it's in their workflow, it takes a life of its own. And now we've completely we've seen a complete 180. Everyone's on it, and the velocity has been insane.
Ron, it's been a pleasure having you on. Your insights really are valuable to the audience here. I think people along their journey trying to figure out how to do this. It's not easy. There's a lot of different steps, a lot of different directions, and you can take 100 roads to the same destination. I think you need to pick one and just move with it. But thank you for joining me today. It's been great, and thank you to the audience here who's tuned in. We really do appreciate you being part of the AppDevANGLE community. But for now, that wraps up this episode. But we'll be back next Wednesday with another conversation diving into the tools, trends, and talent shaping the future of application development. So whether you're deploying at the edge, building with AI, or modernizing your cloud stack, we've got you covered. Be sure to follow us on social if you have any thoughts, questions, or just want to connect. Until next time, stay curious and stay building.